Welcome to Leaders' Questions, where Ireland's leaders face the heat, the pressure, and the toughest questions of the day.
Margaret, Concorda, first of all, Taoiseach, I want to wish you well in your new position. Taoiseach, 2 weeks ago tonight, the people of the West, the North West and the Midlands faced one of the toughest nights of their life with the effects of this storm. And it is still being felt and will be felt into the future. On Saturday morning, first of all, the clean-up operation began, where local communities, contractors got together to clear roads, and I want to compliment them, and the farming community. I want to also compliment the ESB crews who are out day and night, and the guys on the ground in the ESB are doing tremendous work. I do think there are some things higher up that the ESB might learn, and I hope today in Clonlaw and Ballinlaw, where a form is to be signed to get a contractor working to cut trees, will be done fairly rapid. We need to learn lessons from this Taoiseach, where things went wrong. Nobody can prevent a storm, but what we need to do is put appropriate measures of mitigation in place to make people's life a bit easier in a time like this. Unfortunately, people with underlying health conditions, those needing hoists, people with disabilities, newborn babies, young children people needing peg feeding, all the different sleep apnea machines, all the different types of things that you need wouldn't work. There was absolutely no communications whatsoever because phone lines were down, and it was as if we didn't exist for those few days. I welcome Deputy Cleary's humanitarian fund, but I would ask him to look at one thing, and I will say one thing: you were always on the edge of a phone when we wanted it, but the one thing that needs to be done is to find out what's going on, because you'll pay the 100 or the 50 euro, but the rest isn't being done. People couldn't cook all week, so in actual fact, the costs of generators and all of that has been huge. You know, Taoiseach, that I spoke within a government talks in relation to trees. 95% of it, and I'm a contractor myself, so 95% of everything I have seen has been a problem with trees. And I am asking you, will your government bring in a regulation and fund it that the trees round this, within 35 metres in a forestry, 30 metres on roads or near a power line or a communications line, will that be looked after? Second of all, the farming community. Farmers tonight, or in the last 2 weeks, there is sheds with no roof the cows are calving. Will there be a fund brought out for that? Because that's ferociously important to be done. Also, wind-blown timber, huge problem. Will there be, I don't want task force or I don't want talking shops. I know that you're talking about a task force at the moment. It's pounds, shillings and pence that people need at the moment. And will you basically enforce with Irish Water? We're a local group water scheme. We had enough of cop on to get generators. Irish Water are a big operation. There is no answer or no reason that you shouldn't have water in a time like this. We should have been ready for it.
Thank you,
and will you give councils and local communities, because the lot of debris, will you give them funding to make sure that they can do a huge clean-up after this?
Thank you, Deputy.
Thanks very much, Concorda. Thank you very much, Deputy Fitzmaurice, and thanks for the constructive way you're engaging in relation to this issue. And I'm very conscious in your own constituency, this is still a very real issue. You know, while we talk about the next steps, and you rightly talk about the lessons learned, I'm conscious in many parts of the West and North West, we're still seeing a significant number of people, around 12,000 premises without electricity, down from 13,000 this morning, 22,000 yesterday. But this has gone on a very long time for people, and I genuinely do appreciate that. I thank you for your comments about the work of Minister Cleary. We're grateful to him for the work he's been doing and being out on the ground engaging with communities. And so far, that humanitarian assistance scheme has been paid out to over 4,000 claims have been paid out. I think over 800,000 euro paid out to date, and we've been prioritising, I suppose, putting a focus particularly on those who've been without power, or indeed those who are most vulnerable. And houses who lost power and submitted claims for costs will have those claims dealt with as soon as possible. I want to provide your constituents with that assurance. I take the point you make in the way you subtly but rightly differentiated between the ESB and the ESB crews. I want to thank the ESB crews, the over 3,000 men and women out doing incredible work. I do think there are absolutely lessons to learn for the ESB and for Ishgaren, for government departments, for agencies, for local authorities. There's just no doubt about that. Even in a country as small geographically as Ireland, The response varied very significantly depending on which county you happen to live in, and we need to really look at that and look at how there's a much more standard and consistent approach. We need to look at how we can support the communities to be more resilient. I take the point you make. I was in Monaghan recently engaging with the civil defence and others. Phone network had gone down there as well. They were dusting off old phones in the civil defence, old technology if you like. It was the only technology left working. So what do you do when the technology goes down? We can manage to do this in many parts of the world. Surely we can manage to do this here in this country as well. I think you're right on trees, and I think we're going to have to make big calls in relation to this situation. You've spoken to me about this before, but the idea that we're spending millions, and in this storm a hell of a lot more than that, restoring power lines that have been knocked down by trees and then putting the lines back up and then the trees again. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and it is a danger, and government is considering all options in relation to that. I would make the point that the ESB already has, I suppose, significant powers, and we need to consider if there is a need for any further clarity in relation to that. My colleague, the Minister for Agriculture, and the Minister of State, Michael Healy-Rae, yesterday had a specific meeting on that issue of windblow. I'm conscious the TAM scheme is available for farmers too, but we do need to see if there's gaps that need to be plugged there, and we remain engaged. So I'm ruling nothing out, Deputy, nor is the government. We're keeping an open mind in terms of engaging constructively. There will be task forces and reports to review, absolutely, but that's separate and distinct to helping people in the here and now with the emergencies that I know they're feeling in their home, in their business and on their farm.
Thank you, Deputy Fitzmaurice.
I welcome your comments on trees, but the one thing I would say, this needs to be put into a regulation, funded, because no more of this talk can go on. We can never endure what we're after enduring. The one thing I would ask the Minister for Trade and Enterprise to look at small businesses that has been closed over the last week, and some of them are going into 2 weeks now. There's a lot of places that don't have power yet. I would ask Minister for Rural Affairs, community hubs, a generator that a doctor can set up. We need to look at that. We need to learn. I would ask you on the farmers, because TAMS, I do appreciate there isn't a generator grant, but there isn't for old sheds that the roof has gone off and no insurance. So I think we need movement on that rapid. Generators are a thing in rural areas that we need to look at and encourage and try and bring some in. But the one thing that needs to be done, on the NBI, there has been a lot of money spent by the taxpayers of this country, a fabulous thing, the broadband, but the problem is it's decimated at the moment. Air, and I have no great faith in Air because they hardly fix the phone for you, not to mind go putting up the poles that we need to put up. Air will need to be brought to task to make sure that they replace the infrastructure, because our broadband, the NBI broadband, is running out. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Look, you're speaking a lot of common sense in relation to this. The government's going to engage with the local authorities in relation to generators for communities. I mean, that is one of the most kind of obvious things that we should be doing in terms of making sure that there are more generators available in communities for when things like this happen. You're right, nobody can stop the storm. What we do have to do, though, is be better prepared in terms of resilience and infrastructure at that local level. And I do think it's important in any review. Of course, we look at national response, absolutely, but we also need to look at the on-the-ground response. You've mentioned the word community. I mean, one of the good things we've seen from this very difficult time is community coming together. And I'm actually delighted that we've been investing in things like sports capital grants and stuff, because thank God now we have more GA clubs and football clubs with showers and with changing room facilities that they've put to use for communities at this very difficult time. The Minister for Communications here beside me, Minister O'Donovan, is bringing in all the telecommunications companies next week to specifically engage on a number of those issues. My understanding is the vast majority of NBI customers now have their connection back, but we are going to engage with those companies, and I'll come back to you in each of the specific matters, including the agricultural point you made.
Thank you.
Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.